The hunting outpost at the bottom of the hill loomed as the snake charged power in its mouth. The cold black iron and hard water boxes made the snake's blood run cold, sluggish, and muted. However, the energy still built. The snake caught sight of its brethren, frozen, and fury coursed in its veins. But the snake caught movement out of the corner of its eye. It opened its mouth, tapped on the orb with one of its tail feathers, and let out a small charge from its pearl. The invisible red light bounced out of the snake's mouth and reflected back off of a pair of two legs to the left. They both had these long blade sticks. The snake slammed its mouth shut, eyes shut, fan shut, and fell still. It would look just like a log to those two legs, blending into the forest behind. It stayed there for many minutes, just waiting and charging the magical power in the pearl of its mouth. It felt the thump of the two legs' footsteps right in front of it. Oh, how easy it would be to end those two. Just open the mouth, swipe the lightning feather, and release. But no, the next release from the pearl must be the heat, pure warping heat, which would melt the stone in cold, hard water and give the snake's brethren the energy to attack, turning the predatory two legs into the prey. The pearl was nearly fully charged. It's time. The snake jerked up, opens its mouth, and swiped the heat feather on the pearl and let loose. The pair of two legs in front of it were obliterated in the face of that pure pulse of heat. Nothing could stand to it, not the grass, not the dirt, not the cold stone walls, not even the hard water that froze the snake's skin. The other snakes fell to the ground and struck at their captors with fangs. But the snake on the top of the hill, drained of energy, fell to the ground in horror. The feathers, the pearls, those snakes that were captured were already harvested, stripped of their pride and of their powers. None could let out a single pulse, let alone free themselves. The snake on the top of the hill struggled to slither back into the forest. The day was already lost. Hiya! I'm Ink, they, them pronouns, and welcome to the Nook. That opening scene was written according to the creature we're creating today. So if you like that monster, stay tuned to see how it was made and how you can use it at your table. This is a series I call Dungeon Deck, where we make strange monsters and NPCs for tabletop RPGs, including a creature card with art, stats, ability names, and core phrases. Now, with that all out of the way, let's get started. As always, we begin with the prompts. So here we draw 7 cards and select 4 to use for our monster. This time we have a floating tattooed legs, a striped and stitched hand, a giant maw with a candy bucket suspended in the middle, a cog with an eye in the middle, peacock feathers with even more eyes on them, a snake tail with a sword on the end, and leaves arranged just like scale mail. This set seems like horror or Halloween themed, though it is past the time, at least for a few months more. Look, if Halloween pulls a Christmas and butts itself up to Juneteenth, I wouldn't be too broken up about it. Now, let's select the cards that we like. To start out, I want to lock in that snake body and peacock feathers. It feels like they give a strong contrast that is core to these strange creatures. Next, I'll toss out the legs and hand, as well as return that extra card that stuck its way in. Already, we have a direction that strays away from the more humanoid cards, so we're left with the leaves, cog, and maw. At this point, I turned to chat and we ended up discarding the cog. It's a little too sci-fi for our current direction, so our inspirations for this monster are peacock feathers with eyes, snake body with a sword tail, leaves arranged like scales, and a giant maw with a very tempting bucket of candy. Okay, so what can we make from this? Well, we can just rip that snake body's pose, and instead of a sword, well, let's toss on that fan of feathers. Then we can add the scales, though instead of this neat and orderly set of leaves, let's make it messier, like more typical ground cover, something that would make the snake blend in the forest's underbrush. Maybe make it look like a rotting log. Finally, let's toss on that head, and here I'm actually going to use that maw card, but instead of the typical unhinging snake jaw, I want to go further. Let's combine it with an eel jaw, specifically from the pelican or gulper eel. I'll toss in an orb for that middle of the maw, so instead of that bucket to wrap things up. At this point, we've established the basic visual ideas that make this kind of strange snake thing. So now let's mosey on to the lore. Coming into the lore, I think there are two specific real-life situations that I want to pull from in this scenario. The first is shark fin soup, or more specifically, the disgusting hunting practices that lead to the deplorable dish. You see, what frequently happens is that the shark is captured, its fins are cut off, then the shark itself is just released back into the sea to suffocate. Because if you didn't know, sharks need to move through the water to breathe, and they can't exactly regrow their fins. This form of hunting is a horrible practice and something that will forever disgust me. Now, how do I plan on justifying stripping the snakes? Okay, bad phrasing, but my point still stands. How do I justify this link to shark fin soup? Now, before I make any worse word blunders, let's go to the snake's visuals and figure out what it can do. So let's start out with what stands out the most, the head and mouth. Why does this creature need to open its mouth so wide, and what is that orb doing there? Well, orbs tend to do magic, right? So what if this orb was a source of magic? And in fact, maybe it fires a variety of magical powers in all directions. That could help explain why the mouth is so big, to bounce the powers off of the wider space. Actually, this could work sort of like a satellite dish. The orb, if it can fire and receive magic in various forms, could allow this creature to communicate, radar ping an area, and maybe even fire off some destructive beams. This could be a hugely versatile tool in the snake's tool belt, but an even more powerful tool on a mage's staff. Next will be the other showy part of the snake. What could make those feathers so valuable? Well, maybe they could have something to do with the magic. How about we say that the eyes on the feathers are used to change what the orb does, specifically by touching it. So that actually leads to a fun image of the snake fanning its mouth, then blasting off some horrifying death beam. More than that, though, is the understanding that this makes the snake even more valuable as a natural resource. Feathers that can change a magic's nature with just a light brush is wild. Which leads back to that high value in continuous stripping and overhunting. Now, people are really good at getting what they want when they put their minds to it, so why are these snakes even still around in the wild? Well, that's where the strange scales come in. They're used to blend into the environment where a creature lives, a sort of camouflage. So this monster must live somewhere that a mess of underbrush is common. Cool, it lives in a forest. But more than that, it reinforces this snake's place as a creature that needs to protect itself from the predators it doesn't even want to face. Instead, it just avoids their attention, blending into the background. Overall, this gives us a pretty good explanation of like the basics of the story for the snake. It started out as just this wild creature, but then was discovered as something with a hugely powerful set of extremely valuable magical tools that could be harvested from it. But then it got overwhelmingly hunted over and over and over until now there's not much of a population left. It's endangered. It is starting to rebel. These snakes will not take this lying down. Now they're going to start fighting back. And now they're going to start killing the hunters. And with that, let's get to the to action. Of course, wildly flail your various appendages in the direction of the like and subscribe buttons, please. They really help me out with growing this channel. Actually, my dream is to eventually get this channel big enough that in, let's say, 10 years, I can leave my career to pursue this full time. Now, that is a long-term goal, so let's try to hit a smaller one. Can we get this video to 10 likes? It's just a little bit more than what we've been getting up to this point, and I hope to bump it up each video. With that out of the way, let's get to the comments question. In preparation for a tutorial and pseudo Q&A vid in the next couple weeks, what are some questions or specific things that you want to learn from me and my style of creating? Drop them down in the doobly-doo below. I promise to read them all and at the very least respond there, if not in the actual tutorial vid. Now, let's get out that creature card and fill it in. First off will be the name. So we have a few major aspects to balance. We have a magical snake with a fan of peacock feathers that can blend in with the underbrush. Right off the bat, I got a terrible name, Laser Danger Noodle, as sort of an offshoot of the regular Danger Noodle, but I don't think that's the best idea. Let's rethink this. Wikipedia has a good list of common names of a variety of snakes. Shovel snout, snail eating, spine jawed. Seems like we have a pattern here. Object, body part, snake. And from my memory, there are plenty of snakes that have multiple names for the same species that describe different parts. So we can have it be the marble mouth snake or the feather tail snake. Let's go with marble mouth, but feel free to swap the names around as you wish in your campaign. Next up are the abilities. These will help illustrate what our monster can do and give us a general direction on how it defends itself. Let's start out with the skills, as they are the first line of defense. Their point is to camouflage and conceal, though I think they're plenty defensive too. The right word would help a lot with this. Something like deflection, but specifically tuned to attention, like how people's eyes glaze over most advertisements and fine print. Let's bring out the thesaurus. Sloth is fun. Shed feels somewhat thematic. Deflection feels almost right. I can't really get a better word for that. So let's toss in that attention part with the rest of the words. Gaze deflection skills. These skills, by deflecting attention, can let the snake avoid many more battles than it has ever won. Just by letting the hunters pass by, the snake wins. It does not need to kill in order to claim victory, especially if it can avoid the conflict passively. For many creatures, the best defense is just to never be noticed. The same is easily said for this snake. Next is that orb in the snake's mouth, though I think there's a better, more biological term for it. How about we call it a pearl? The other major part is that it pushes out a bunch of power. Emission is a good descriptive word, though I think there may be a better one. Let's look it up on thesaurus again. Well, I've most certainly found a worse word. Ejaculation. Let's go with emanation, or perhaps a different conjugation of the word. Oh, how about this? Pearl of emanation. It pushes that idea of omnidirectional power that would be focused by the mouth shape. On top of that, pearls are already highly valued as is, and that value has, in some cases, led to overhunting of oysters. So that very well fits the pattern of the snake getting overhunted in this story. Finally, we can do the feathers. The baseline for this is that they can change the type of magic, whether it be attributes, elements, or some other descriptor. I like the idea that each snake gets its own set of feathers that determine what types of power the pearl can emanate. Though they can all just push out pure power, much less efficiently though. So let's go off that idea. Magic tuning feathers seems good, sort of like tuning forks, but arcane power is so often tied with color that it would be better to go in that direction. How about feathers of coloring magic? Sounds whimsical and fun, but as we established in the lore, that's hugely valuable and leads to the overhunting of these creatures. The themes and general vibes of this ability fits very well with the creature's story. Overall, these abilities demonstrate why this snake's parts are so deeply desired by so many mages. The magical tools that come from them are extremely useful. However, these snakes are not just going to roll over and be harvested. They have plenty of tools to fight back with and will take many hunters down with them. There's a reason they're so greatly feared as well as desired. Now we have the stats. We'll be using the D&D 5th edition stat spread, but the numbers will refer to the modifiers instead of the stats themselves. Strength. These snakes aren't constrictors, so the need of overwhelming crushing force is minimal, if any at all. Instead, they focus on their magical power and speed. 0. Constitution. With the pearls in their mouths, these snakes deal with so much backsplash of their own magical powers. So being able to withstand these types of forces is paramount. Also, this is their magic stat. 5 points. Dexterity. A fairly high priority for these creatures. While the magic is their primary tool, those fangs still have venom, and a last-minute bite can finish off many foes. Also, the ability to dodge a hunter's attacks is never bad. 2. Intelligence. The marble-mouthed snakes aren't very fact-based. I mean, they're beasts. They know they're part of the world, and that's about it. -3. Wisdom. This was originally going to be the snake's magic stat, but I realized that Constitution would be a much better fit. However, that doesn't mean the snakes have a low score here. In fact, they're still extremely perceptive, especially if they have a good type of magic from one of their feathers, something like maybe like infrared or sonic kind of things, so that they can make a sort of sonar. 2 points. Charisma. There's not much communication or force of will from these snakes, or, well, there wasn't. But these hunters driving them to near extinction, well, the snakes have started to band up and help save each other, bringing the need for communication to the forefront and boosting their charisma. 1. With these stats, the beast truly becomes a fearsome foe, hard to defend against and hard to kill. That's probably why so many hunters opted to capture and harvest instead of kill and slaughter. Though with the new tactics and drive, these creatures are mounting a strong defense. Finally, we have the core phrases. These are a set of statements or questions that help characterize monsters and guide DMs on how to play these creatures in a unique and interesting way. The first one comes actually with a bit of a scene from my head. The hunting group creeps around the forest, searching for their chosen prey. But there's nothing around but trees and fallen logs. One of the hunters steps over a particularly long one and tramps on. "Area's clear, let's move on." And right after they leave, the log opens its eyes and slithers away. This reinforcement of avoidance over conflict is so common in the real world, and letting these hunted animals, even the giant and overwhelmingly powerful ones, reflect that is so good. But in this specific instance, I want it targeted at the hunters that target these snakes. So let's make it hide from the 2 legs. This focus on avoidance both sets up how these snakes have lasted so long, but also how they fall to these hunters so often. Without removing the threat, it'll just hit another snake, one that may not be able to hide, escape, or fight off these hunters. This is a core phrase that I anticipate changing as your tables go through the arc of this hunters versus snakes situation, possibly even turning into an ambush-focused phrase. The second core phrase would be more focused on the snake's response to the hunters outside of direct combat. Find the brethren. As mentioned in the stats section, these snakes are starting to gather to protect each other. They must create a fighting force to free their captured kin and prevent their own extinction. And once this force is gathered, well, I'll leave what happens in the war to your tables. Finally, let's go for their more natural instincts, ones from before the Great Hunt. Something that I like to establish is that these snakes start out only about a meter long with pearls about the size of marbles, so equivalent to a garden snake. But they can grow to be gigantic worms with a U, not a Y or O, with no known upper limit for the size of the pearls or their own bodies. So let's push that idea that these creatures focus on that growth in their natural life cycle. Eat prey and grow. They're predators and thus must feast on living things. maybe deeper in the forest, there's a snake large enough to turn even the hunters into prey. These core phrases illustrate the general situation that these snakes face and how they respond. They avoid hunters, seek their kin, and try to grow and maybe become large enough to fend off this threat, either as individual predators or an army of serpents. All right, and that's that. Originally, this was going to be one of the more mindless monsters, but as I wrote that initial draft of the script, things started to take shape, and this creature became more a tale of hunters and predatory prey. I love these kinds of creatures that, through these little pieces of lore, paint an entire picture of a society, town, and quest line for your players to explore, in addition to portraying a real-life phenomenon. I hope you enjoyed, and that y'all stick around for the next video where I'll go into how you can draw and create weirdly like how I do. So subscribe for that to show up in your feed when it's out, and if you have any questions that you'd like answered for that video, please comment them down below so I can get to them with that next vid. Hope to see y'all there. And with that, let's bring this video to a close. For those of you with dark skies, good night. And if you have bright days, good morning. Whatever part of the world you're from, I hope you have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Goodbye!